What's up, gamers? Sorry about that. What's up, everybody? This is Keon from Print3D, and today we have a very special tutorial. In anticipation of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, we decided we would make a tutorial for one of our favorite characters,
Mr. Game & Watch.
In this tutorial, we're basically going to show you how to make your very own Mr. Game & Watch Amiibo. This 3D model is going to be an extrusion of Mr. Game & Watch with his own base, so it can stand upright and sit on your desk or wherever you want to put it. So without any further ado, let's get started. First things first, we need to find a really good representation of Mr. Game & Watch. What we did was we went on Google and found our favorite picture of Mr. Game & Watch. This one should do nicely. Now let's open up Fusion 360 and put it on the canvas. Once we've got it aligned exactly how we want it, let's start sketching. The first thing we did was make some geometric shapes that'll do most of the work for us. Mr. Game & Watch is made up of mostly circles and curved edges. So we started laying down circles in the obvious places we saw. Luckily that gets rid of most of the work, but we still need to go in with the pen tool and trace around the outline of the picture. All we need to do is go slowly around the picture and make sure that all of the lines match up pretty well. Once we have the whole thing outlined, you'll see that some of these lines cross over each other. To fix that, we're going to be using the Trim tool. The Trim tool is a hotkey T in Fusion 360, and it's incredibly useful for sketches. Once you click it, you can trim any line that is in between two other lines. That's really useful for something like this, because if we get rid of all of the lines in between, then we can click on the center of this entire sketch and then be able to extrude it all as one piece. That'll save us a lot of time and effort in the future. All we're going to do is go around the sketch and get rid of any of those middle lines that might make it harder for Fusion 360 to extrude the entire model. And you know what? For Mr. Game & Watch, we're basically done. All we need to do is extrude it as one piece. And there he is, ready to go. Now that Mr. Game & Watch is done, let's give him a base. To do this, it's going to be pretty easy. All we need to do is make a thin cylinder that has a little hole in the middle. The first thing we're going to do is create the peg on Mr. Game & Watch where he'll fit into the cylinder. This is going to be pretty easy. We're going to make a thick rectangle and make the depth and the length exactly what we need when we're going to be putting it into the cylinder. So earlier we extruded Mr. Game & Watch to be 5mm. So let's keep that number in mind for the depth. Now let's make the rectangle pretty big so Mr. Game & Watch can stand without falling over. How about 10mm by 2mm? Now that we have all those measurements and we've extruded out the peg, let's make the cylinder and put the hole in. For the cylinder, let's make it pretty big. So let's give it a 65mm diameter and then a 70mm diameter. And that way we can extrude the difference and give it a little bit of a lip, just like we did in the Mario coin video. Once extruded, all we need to do is make that rectangular hole in the middle where the peg is going to fit. Since we remember the dimensions from before, it's going to be pretty easy. It needs to be 4mm tall and 10mm wide. And we made the thickness of the cylinder 5mm, so the peg will go all the way through and sit really firmly. This is our first 3D model that will be fitting into two pieces. So something to remember is that 3D printers have a little bit of over extrusion on each side of the hole. So let's account for that by adding 0.1mm to each of the sides. Therefore we'll have a little bit of wiggle room on the peg on Mr. Game & Watch. And with that, we're done. Now all we need to do is send it over to the slicer and get it ready for the printer. Luckily in Cura, our favorite slicer, we don't have much to do. All we need to do is import the 3D model and size it up to what we think would look good. I think about 150mm wide should be pretty nice. And with that, we're good to go. Now let's see how it looks when it's printing. Mr. Game & Watch is ready for battle. but this project wasn't without its hiccups. The first time we printed it ended up failing. So we have this thin, neat little Mr. Game & Watch that we can just put anywhere. It's almost like a bookmark, it's super thin. People don't realize that the first layer is basically as thin as paper. Moving on, we have our first iteration, which is what we modeled together. And we found out a few things. One, the flag broke off. It was a really small connection, so it didn't really have much support. And on top of that, the hole was in the middle of the circle. And unfortunately, Mr. Game & Watch is standing at a weird angle. So when you put him in the middle, he kind of veers off to the right. Not the best design. So we went back to the drawing board and we came up with this version. This new version has a thicker part for the flag so it doesn't just break off like the other one. And on top of that, the hole is moved a little to the left so that Mr. Game & Watch sits exactly center. We think it's a way better version, and honestly it's far more sturdy. And there we go, we have our finished Mr. Game & Watch amiibo. Perfect for any desk or gaming lounge. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully now you know how to go out and make your own little amiibo for yourself. But if not, you have a chance to win this one. We are really excited for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. So if you comment below with your favorite character or your favorite feature that's going to be in the new game, and we will pick one comment at random and that person will receive this Mr. Game & Watch figurine from Print3D LLC. If you want another one for yourself or as a gift for a friend, you can check it out on our Etsy page at Print3D LLC. And if you want more 3D printing or to participate in one of our frequent giveaways, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest. Make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget, stay creative.